Once again, welcome and thank you for joining us in this program that we have in partnership with the Connecting Across Cultures Immigrant Support Group in the Mid-Coast. We are very pleased tonight to welcome three panelists, and they are going to be talking about the many hurdles that immigrants to our state have to overcome. And before we begin that, I want to introduce our representative who's here tonight from Connecting Across Cultures, Catherine Lyon. You can unmute yourself and go ahead and tell us about your organization. Thanks.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you so much, Julia. And Connecting Across Cultures, I'd like to thank the library, the Camden Public Library, for partnering again with us on this intermittent series that we have about immigrants in Maine. And of course, we all want to thank all of you for joining us. A little bit of background about CAC, Connecting Across Cultures. It was formed by residents of Camden, Rockport, Rockland, Thomaston, and other nearby communities to address three goals. The first, to educate ourselves and others about immigration. The second, to work on creating an infrastructure to welcome new Mainers who move to the Mid-Coast region. And finally, to help immigrant support organizations in other parts of the state. So about a year ago, we teamed up with the Maine Immigrants' Rights Coalition, known as MIRC, to raise funds for newly arrived asylum seekers, and it resulted in donations of almost $18,000 towards making the winter of 2021 a little warmer and more welcoming for our newcomers. This year, our efforts are focused on two initiatives. In partnership with MIRC, again, the Maine Immigrants' Rights Coalition, we're again seeking support for asylum seekers in Maine. And second, we're working to provide support for the Afghan community of Maine as they extend a lifeline to relatives who remain in harm's way in Afghanistan. So as you listen to this evening's discussion, if you're moved to learn more about us or join our efforts, we would certainly appreciate any help that you'd like to offer. At the end of the program, I'll return and give you information on how to contact us. And now back to Julia.
Thank you so much, Catherine. And I will also type into the chat box some resources that folks can go to find out more information about Connecting Across Cultures. Okay, so we are going to be hearing from Fatima Saide tonight, Chelsea Hoskins, and Pappy Bongibo. We are going to start with Chelsea. Let me tell you a little bit about Chelsea. She is the City of Portland's Resettlement Coordinator. She has worked for the City of Portland since 2017 and ran the Portland Community Support Fund when it was in operation. She then served as the program coordinator for the City of Portland Family Shelter for nearly 3 years before transitioning over to her role as the resettlement coordinator. Chelsea, I invite you now to unmute yourself and tell us a little about your program.
Thank you so much, Julianne. Thank you for having me tonight. It is really a pleasure to talk about this topic of new arrivals in Maine. And certainly many of you know we have varying different immigration categories of those who travel to our state, but the resettlement coordinator position specifically focuses on asylum seeking families. So that's what I will focus on mostly this evening. So as Julia mentioned, my history with the city has really been solely focused on supporting asylum seekers, whether that's families or individuals across the different roles I have held. And what is interesting is that the resettlement coordinator position did not exist before this year. So that in itself, I think, says something about the number of arrivals that we're seeing and having for the need to this position to even occur, to be able to help to coordinate efforts, wrap around resources, which is the main target, is really to partner with our agencies, our local agencies, nonprofits, CBOs, to really create some wraparound supports and stability for these families as they travel to Maine. And many of those supports are on our call tonight, which is really great. So some of you may recall, just as a little bit of a background, the City of Portland has been receiving varying immigrants from many, many years, and the City of Portland's Family Shelter has been a huge hub of this. So way back in the early 2000s, we were seeing families travel from different countries It really has shifted from local American families or domestic families to the new Mainer population over the past 10, 15 years or so. In 2019, we had a lot of media around this, of course, because from June 12th to August 15th, we saw 435 asylum seekers and family groups travel to Portland in a very short period of time. So at that point, you saw a lot of media. We had a lot of support from state representatives, agencies, as well as Merck and Pappy and Coco Maine on this call as well. There were huge supports for us that summer as we transitioned to the Portland's Exposition building. It was really a huge feat to be able to exit that shelter on August 15th and transition back to the City of Portland Family Shelter with only 30 people in our overflow, which was huge compared to having hundreds. And that was really thanks to the big community support of Merck and GP Cog with the host home program, landlords reaching out to us to get housing supports for many of these families, and the whole community and state at large, to be totally honest with you. That fall, we had a slight reduction in numbers. We were kind of at a really even pace. And then in December 2019, we saw arrivals uptick once more. And at that point, the City of Portland's Family Shelter had to open an additional overflow. So generally families are in the shelter and then they would have an overflow sleeping space. At that time, we partnered with the Salvation Army, but we had to actually make an additional partnership, luckily with our local YMCA, to have an additional overflow for sleeping space for families. Again, we still had some great momentum from the host home programs, some housing options, and we were able to generally absorb a lot of those families into the shelter directly or into local housing placements, which was really wonderful. In 2020, we had manageable numbers, I would say. You know, we had the start of COVID, of course, so we really saw a large decrease in the numbers of arrivals that were coming to the City of Portland. And for the most part, we could manage the flow with a small overflow of families and our regular housing placements, which was really fantastic. It was nice to give everyone a little break after the big rush and be able to really kind of regroup, make sure we had those good supports in place, learn those lessons from the expo, continue those new partnerships we built with the community to be able to support the families. Then I'm going to switch over to a little bit of screen sharing as we go into the trends for 2021 and families that we're seeing now. So in 2021, again, we're kind of in the midst of COVID here. We can see that we are starting off still slow with the arrivals. So this is about families, really, is what we're speaking to here for this data. So in January, you know, we had 13 families arrive that month for 43 people in total. And those trends kind of remained for that early part of 2021 once again. So, you know, we're averaging 40, 50 new individuals of family groups coming each month, which is a pretty general pace. And fortunately, with the landlord relationships the City of Portland Family Shelter has, as well as our many other partners who support the same population with housing, we're able to kind of keep the pace and needs, you know, of housing to be able to make sure that we're not in a huge overflow situation. So in 2020, when the COVID pandemic first started, we had to transfer our overflow from on-site to hotels, of course, to maintain proper social distancing and everything of the sort. And we were able to have a small hold of hotels. We really kind of established the two smaller locations. And then late October 2020, the numbers started increasing slightly more, where we had to expand to an additional hotel. And really these hotels kind of just work with general assistance. There's not necessarily contracts in place. They just accept the general assistance funding to be able to have families in these hotel locations. Generally, they were intended to be really short-term housing options until families could either locate housing or transition into the family shelter where they'd receive some more supports. But as you can see, as the numbers continue to increase, specifically looking at once we hit July on through the end of the year, the numbers really became far outpacing the housing that we could create. So at this point, it is unfortunate, but we do have families existing in hotels from anywhere to 5 to 9 or more months as they're kind of waiting and waiting for some housing options to occur. In October, we thought that was going to be the highest number of arrivals. That month was the highest we had seen so far, with 45 families for 145 individuals coming in a 1 month span. However, when December came around, that ended up beating that number by far, with 68 families for 222 people coming in 1 month period. So far in 2022, we've received in January 49 families for 181 individuals who presented to the City of Portland, and they generally present either to the General Assistance Office or directly to the City of Portland's Family Shelter, just reporting that they're unhoused and they're looking for some assistance in housing support. They report, they would like to establish some of their residents permanently in Maine due to the fact that they are aware of the City of Portland's benefit programs and options, as well as the big community of support that they've received here, and the fact that Maine has been such a welcoming and supportive state. As of today, and the numbers are always fluctuating depending upon new arrivals, as well as housing placements and Canadian departures, we currently have 187 families for 627 individuals, which is across 7 hotels and 5 municipalities. Of those numbers, because our shelter of course supports all families, but of those numbers, we have 177 families for 597 individuals that consist of new arrivals that are coming from primarily the southern border of the US and are seeking asylum. The top 2 countries of origin for newly arriving families are from the DRC and Angola. In 2021, we started receiving Haitian entrants as well, and they're able to be referred to and work with Catholic Charities for their full wraparound supports because they do have a protected status as a Haitian and Cuban entrant. Other countries that we see arrivals from also include Congo-Brazzaville, Burkina Faso, Rwanda, Ghana, Nigeria, and Brazil this year. There are varying programs that assist with housing, but housing is probably our biggest need. Certainly that you can't emphasize that enough. Families are locating housing from various options. So when you're new, certainly you're not aware of all the ways to search for housing, what you're eligible for. So the challenge really becomes when families or individuals are looking for housing, they're not always aware of all the barriers that they're going to face, such as property management companies requiring a credit score or a social security score, a social security number, or a certain level of income even to really apply, or the fact that a lot of applications now are done over the internet and you must have an application fee to run a background check. Many of our families are not eligible for any benefits, which includes TANF for any income at this time. So they're limited to what they can apply for and receive assistance with for housing. So the City of Portland Family Shelter works on housing for those that are in the shelter, as well as any family who they may receive a lead for, but they may not have a family of that size in the shelter. For example, if a landlord reaches out with a 3-bedroom apartment and they don't have a large enough family to be placed in that, then they will look for families in the hotels as well to get them housed and placed into permanent housing. We also have great partnerships with Greater Portland Family Promise, which is basically a smaller version of the family shelter with a smaller caseload that assists with full wraparound supports and services. Hope Acts also works with housing navigation for our newly arriving asylum seekers. Project Home has been a really great resource the past couple of years with Victoria Morales' program of Quality Housing Coalition. And this has been a great option because she's able to partner with landlords or property management companies that potentially would have excluded families due to the screening processes, like I mentioned before, of a social security number, credit score, or level of income. And what is wonderful is that MOU can supersede those requirements and it can partner the family with a housing navigator that works in tandem with the family as a liaison with the landlord to make sure that there aren't any issues, to make sure that the landlords understand maybe how their rental process might work, how they're receiving their rent for example, or those benefit programs. So it's been a really great partnership and option for us to be able to get families into some more higher end housing that they would really not have had access to, which is great. Catholic Charities, as I mentioned before, partners with some of our families. From our program, we're talking really of asylum seekers, and that would be those coming from Haitian entrants. And certainly there's case managers. So there's varying options for case management. Unfortunately, most of our families are not eligible for Maine care dependent upon their status. So therefore, there's a few options for case management, such as Opportunity Alliance's Homeless Youth Services program, where any child who is homeless or unhoused can receive a case management through that program, and they'll work with the whole family to try to find those wraparound supports, including housing. Certainly, of course, many community-based organizations and churches and local areas also support families in looking for housing. So once they get connected to one of those organizations or a church or just the community in general, word can spread. So if they hear of a friend leaving an apartment, or there's someone in the building that they're renting through having an available apartment, that's been a great option for families to connect to locate housing independently on their own. There are many, many needs going on right now, and this is really just big picture needs. To be honest with you, I could go into much more detail. But one of the largest things we're seeing that is really a challenge for families traveling here is access to immigration resources. So as you can imagine, you're new to the country, you are not familiar with the English language potentially. Most of our families do not have full English fluency when they arrive. That's something that they work through as they're here and they're settling into the state. But in addition to the immigration resources, you're trying to also figure out the system in general. And usually you would want support, of course, for an attorney to do so. So there are varying challenges that might seem like minutia at first, but a family may cross the border and think that they're going to a friend's location in Chicago, for example, and then end up in Portland, Maine, because that person couldn't take them in after all. And they're not aware to do a change of venue for their court, for example. And they may find out very last minute they've got to be in court in Chicago in a short period of time. So some more assistance on immigration access, attorneys would be very beneficial for everyone in the state. You're thinking also just having to do change of address forms and being mindful of if you move from a hotel location to a friend's home or to permanent housing, that you have to do an address change each time to make sure you're not missing that important documentation, and even sometimes access to, printing materials, mail, envelopes, things like that might seem small or really have a big need in order to make sure that families are compliant with all of their requests and requirements for immigration as they work through that asylum process. Transportation is also huge. So as I mentioned before, 7 hotels for families across 5 different towns makes transportation challenging. Some of the municipalities have sporadic transportation, even that's public transportation, and also even access to get bus passes can be a challenge. Families may not have the income to be able to purchase bus passes on their own. They may not be connected to a program that has the ability to give them bus passes on a consistent basis, and or the available public transportation may be limited in how much it runs throughout the day, which means you're having to get to things like medical appointments, your general assistance appointments, or just socializing in general to not be as isolated is a challenge. Food accessibility also. So if you're thinking of staying in a hotel, you're thinking maybe a couple of days, a week, month tops. Perhaps you could get by with, using a microwave for your cooking source. But when you're talking 5 to 9 months of your family relying upon the hotel for being able to cook whole meals for your family, that becomes pretty strenuous and quite the challenge. So we're having some challenges with food accessibility. Families really are wanting the urge to be able to be in their own home, to be able to cook healthy meals for their families, to be able to have that sense of community, that sense of peace that really is offered through even something as what we may take for granted as simple as a home cooked meal. And of course, the greatest need is affordable housing that we cannot highlight enough. General assistance and benefits. So some of you on the call may or may not be familiar with general assistance. That is a program that every municipality or county in the state technically has. It's run by the state of Maine, has an overseeing entity to do, audits for each municipality and how they run it. But it can be run very differently from municipality to municipality. So as mentioned prior, asylum seekers who come into the country and, someone who may have a diversity visa has a very different experience here when they first arrive compared to someone who crosses the southern border, for example, who's relying solely on general assistance. So rental rates for general assistance are often far below what you would see advertised as a market rate for an apartment, for example. So not only are you needing to find the very few available apartments that exist, you're also needing to make sure that they're within a general assistance guideline and that the property or entity will comply with that program and be willing to access those funds from that program, which can sometimes have a slight delay in the payment process. So that it is sometimes a barrier for landlords on top of already knowing that the families that they may be renting to might not have, a rental history, for example, which is something they might traditionally be expecting or looking for. So something we're really trying to advocate for, from the city's perspective and a lot of community advocates as well, is really more consistency in how the general assistance program could be run across the state. Because if we could have more consistency in that program and for the housing assistance, we'd be able to potentially expand the option for resettlement for families across the state, which would really benefit the state entirely, as well as reduce the amount of time we're seeing families unhoused and in these conditions like hotel overflows, for example. So we have a lot of supports as much as we can in the hotel overflows with programs like MERC, which I know Fatima will speak to, doing some on the ground support, as well as case management drop in, some on-site teams of like WIC and health homes doing enrollments. But, that certainly still is challenging, and many municipalities are getting stretched. You may have seen some local articles recently where the South Portland School Department was hitting capacity in some of their school classrooms. So that ability to really expand across the state would be huge, to be able to have these students spread across the state, to have housing spread across the state, to really enrich our community and state in general, and reduce that time that they're unhoused and living in the hotels. And something that's been happening a lot recently, I've seen a lot of media likely about this, is the ability to be able to work sooner. So something that would be fantastic for a legislative change would be the relationship for the asylum seekers to obtain their work permit sooner. Families do not want to be relying upon these public benefits, to be totally frank, and they can be challenging to comply with at times because you're really restricted to what stores you can grocery shop at, how you spend the income that you receive, and that has to go through a certain protocol with the general assistance program. So an ability to be able to work sooner would be huge for the families and all asylum seekers that we're seeing, so that they could be more independent and be more contributing to our society that they really would like to be doing. Many are coming with advanced degrees, backgrounds in business, and that's something that they're hoping to carry further here to make a home for their family and to provide some sense of stability for them. I think that's all I have for my screens there. And I probably went a little over the 10 minutes, so I'll wrap it up, but I'm certainly happy to take more questions at the end as well.
Thank you so much, Chelsea. We appreciate that. Okay, so our next presenter tonight is Fatima Saidi, and Fatima is the Grants and Contracts Manager for Maine Immigrants' Rights Coalition, which we referred to earlier as MERC, which brings together a statewide network of 83 organizations which are working to promote immigrant inclusion and integration. Fatima was born in Afghanistan, and she came to the US as an international student at Bates College. Fatima, I invite you to now unmute yourself and tell us your story.
Thank you so much, Julia. Hi, everyone. I hope today was sunny. So I hope if you're in Maine, enjoy the sunny day, because tomorrow is going to snow a lot. So So as Julia mentioned, I do work with MERC, and I am the Grants and Contracts Manager. For most of my responsibility, I directly work with our ethnic organization. So we have it's a statewide coalition. So we have 83 member organization. Out of 83, we have 27 ethnic organization. Like Coco Maine is our subgrantee, Puppy's organization is our subgrantee, and also our member organization. So I work closely with Puppy and the Angolan community and the Afghan community, and most of the time I just help them with their budgets, or I oversee their budgets. So Puppy and I have been working for the past a year and a half since I've been hired. So I want to talk about three things. First, MERC and what we are doing. Second, need. I know Chelsea went into detail. And the last one that when I was doing this, I was thinking about this presentation, and the past few months, a lot of people have reaching out. How can I help? How can I help? So I want to answer that question. And the way I observe and what really is the greatest need in our community. So first of all, MERC is an ecosystem, basically. So we have three different foundations. It's advocacy for immigrants. So we advocate on their behalf. When it comes to when Chelsea was talking about immigrants not being able to work sooner, an asylum seeker takes 6 months to be able to apply, and that's also not 100% like when you apply. So so we are advocating on their behalf, and also there's a lot of other barriers beside that. So we're doing advocacy, we do collaboration, meaning we are sharing information, we're trying to collaborate with Chelsea, which is the city of Portland. And so, and across municipality, state, national, whatever, to make the life of immigrants better. We inform, we're trying to teach the public, whoever is listening to us, we are trying to share information, we are trying to teach you what's happening and how things are happening, because that's one of the most important thing now. So the needs are, again, it's the housing, transportation, and food. And the reason that I think, before I go in detail, I want to talk about when people refer to immigrant, it's an umbrella term. There's a lot of different levels into that. So different immigrants in different category and boxes have different privileges or different marginalization. For example, if you're undocumented or you're an asylum seeker, you're really the lower category, because there's so much discrimination against them. It's the hardest, but at the same time, these two groups are the most marginalized group of immigrants. And that's what we are talking now, just asylum seekers in the hotels tonight. So I want you to remember to, when you're talking about immigrant, just be very specific, because that really solves the problem. So this is our lesson 1 tonight. Just refer to them as asylum seeker. And the housing is a struggle. Yeah, there's not a lot of housing, and we really, and the reason that they are, and I think before we talk about why the housing is struggle, like one of the things that we constantly hear this word, that housing crisis, especially when it comes to immigrant. But in my opinion, it's not a crisis, it's a failure. It's a failure, because when you're saying a crisis, they look at us and almost blame us for the failure that state is doing, for the failure that in the national level and the local level. The immigrant are in this position, first of all, because we put them in this position, because we don't allow them to work for 6 months. So how can we say that it's a crisis when the U.S. government, when the state, when this system has created this problem? So it's not a failure. It is a discrimination. It's a violation of basic human right, as far as I'm concerned. So we should, and also lack of housing. There's not a lot of housing. It's not just the immigrant or asylum seeker are facing this. It's the same thing happening with a lot of poor white people, that they can't find housing. When you go to these motels that there are immigrants there, you can walk a couple rooms down, there is a white family there too. So we, and again, we as a society, almost, I think that sometimes it makes me very angry and almost emotional, that in a society in Maine, and I have worked with I have been seeing these families living in the situation they are living, and it's almost like the most overt, the most socially systematic racism is happening against these asylum seekers. They are forced to live in this situation, and we are all and people come to me and it's really, I don't really know how to say that. It's how much we are failing these people. And because if you are, and I'm sure Poppy is going to talk about going to the hotels, this is not how a human, this is not, when people come to our society, when people choose to come here, they choose us, they walk, they cross the ocean, they walked a continent to get here, and they choose to come here. And this is how we are treating them. And that's our failure. And so I'm gonna leave that there. And then the next thing that I wanted to talk about after listening to Chelsea, and and something that I constantly see, there's a lot of racism. There's a lot of anti-Black rhetoric. I often, when the Afghans were coming to Maine, there were Haitians being deported, but yet no one reach out and say how they can help the Haitians. Even in the city, what Chelsea said, what she said, that they're referring them to the Catholic charity. The Catholic charity is almost overwhelmed with the Afghans that they are receiving. And if we want to change this, we have to learn to prioritize Black immigrant. We have to centralize Black immigrant, because this system is a system that is created an anti-Black, anti-Brown, on the anti-Black and anti-Brown foundation. And the last thing I want to also talk about, I constantly hear people talking about our immigration system is broken. And I often say, how is it broken? It's perfectly working for what it was designed to do. It was created to oppress people who are darker, who are brown, and is doing perfectly fine. So we need to stand back and start realizing that this system is not working, and it will never work as long as we are trying to create pieces. This system is going to continue. If we are doing something, we really need to completely listen to our Black immigrant. We need to listen to our brown immigrant and just destroy it, because that's the only way we can do it. Because as every couple months in my line of work, we have to constantly compromise. We have to, and who we are compromising? The most vulnerable, who are these asylum seekers and the motels. And now even the fact that we are coming here and talking what are the needs and things, and some of you are really, even now when I'm talking, you're probably very uncomfortable, because you come here to hear how are we doing, and I can donate a piece of cloth, or I can give $50. No, but most of immigrants at Chelsea say they're not here to get a piece of cloth. They're not here to receive your second hand. They're not here to even receive any money from you. They are here because they were promised an American dream before coming, and it was taken on the border from them. And the system is designed in a way that they would never reach. As an immigrant, an asylum seeker, you constantly have to prove yourself. You apply in the border, which is more likely you will be rejected because there is no lawyer in the border. So when you apply, you come here, and some of the people even have like the things that people go to jail. You put an ankle bracelet. Some of our families do have, and they are infected. And we constantly have meetings about that. And then after that, going from that, you are trying to make a living. You choose Maine, you come here, and then you're forced to not work for 6 months, but you have a family to feed. What do? You're forced to live in this whole thing. And then on top of that, you have to figure out, if you take this government benefit, you might be rejected. If you take that benefit, you might be this. So there is a lot happening, and why everyone has to, the only thing I'm asking for anyone is be angry. Go online. For example, the best you can do, go online, see DHHS, apply for asylum, see how long is the thing, and then apply it to your life for a week. And maybe you realize, but that's not going to happen. We are constantly doing this. We are constantly running and dancing around, but it's not going to solve. Even if we help this one group, tomorrow the next is coming. The day after tomorrow, the next is coming. And the worst thing about racism is that it is so good at blending in with the compromises, and then tomorrow it changes shape, and then we have to fight it again. And I honestly, So I want to tell you guys, I have been have a very long day trying to figure out why a mother who is infected because her feet is this ankle, and I spend the whole day trying to figure out who I have to reach out because this mother needs help. But it's kind of like I have to call this person, that person is like, maybe you should talk to this person, that person, and there is no way. That's why I'm normally a very easy, happy going person, but today has been a very hard time. So I'm gonna like just make you guys understand how hard it is for even us, Chelsea, Poppy, and all of us. We're trying. We are all trying, but we don't need to do it if our government does its job well. I don't need to be here advocating on their behalf if our government was not just such a failure. If we don't need to do it, if we truly accept, if we truly believe and respect each individual as a human being and respect their basic human right. And yet we are here because we do not do those things. So I am sick and tired of going from one meeting to the next meeting to talk about all of these things again and again and again, and nothing is going to happen. We all gonna, after this meeting, we are all gonna go, and maybe some of us gonna have tea, some of us are gonna have a glass of wine, water, whatever, and tomorrow our day is gonna get. But that mother whose feet is infected, she is gonna suffer tonight, she's gonna suffer tomorrow, she's gonna suffer I don't know how long. So that's where we are. And if you want to help, I want you to get angry. I want to be actively against racism. I want you to center Black lives. I want you to center Black immigrants. And I don't want you. So this is I'm sorry, I had a presentation, but I just had a very long day and I needed to take that out. So if you have any question at the end, I will respond to it. But thank you.
Thank you so much, Fatima. I appreciate that you delivered a very candid and honest insights, and I know that's not what you had planned to do tonight, but I think it was perhaps the most valuable talk that you could have given tonight to help us again remember the most important part of this whole program is to remember the humanity, and you helped us remember that. So thank you so much. And we will address some questions too a little bit later on in the program. Our last presenter this evening is Papi Bongibo. And let me tell you a little bit about him before he gets started. He is the president of the Congolese Community Association of Maine, COCO Maine. You may have heard that referred to already. The mission of COCO Maine is to facilitate the integration of Congolese people and assist them during their transition to life in Maine. COCO Maine also strives to promote entrepreneurship and the Congolese culture through events and forums. Papi is also the founder of New England African Arts, Entertainment, and Community Association as an entrepreneur. So Papi, it is your turn. Take over.
Thank you for having me tonight. I really appreciate it. And also, since Chelsea and Fatima went to more details, I'm just gonna focus on a few things, maybe we can move forward. Yes, my experience from 2 years from now, when the asylum seekers arrive in Maine, the expo was really different, for today's experience, because when they arrived 2 years ago, and we had all the organization there in one place, which was the expo. So it was kind of easy to move around and meeting all the team there and having everybody on the same spot. So we knew what we were doing. But today's experience is a little hard because they have been putting them into different terms, which I understand because of the COVID, And the hardest part is it's hard to during the drive, just imagine going from hotel 1, 2, 3 within like 3 or 4 different cities, which is, actually giving us a hard time to find volunteers, and also without the good financial, we are out of capacity to actually have 3 or 4 teams into different spots. And I'm going to talk about a few challenges, for example, since my experience from this hotel, because we split into a group. I remember the last time we had a meeting with Chelsea when she called out for her help. So we were looking to see like who's gonna do what, because we have like 6 or 7, area that we need to support, and the Congolese community and the Maine Immigration Recognition and Angola are working together. And we were based on helping Howard Johnson, which is in South Portland, and I think Quality Inn and Motel 6 in Portland. So one of the big challenge is for the incoming family is the language barrier. Language barrier when completing the state requiring paperwork. In the past, when we were receiving, a small number, it's easy to deal with a small number of, families that the largest number, because I remember in the past, we just, you're gonna have like 5 or 3 or 4, which you can manage. But lately, it's been very hard, even when we request the help of High Lab. Sometimes they overwhelmed and they're all booked. They're always gonna tell you, we cannot receive you. So this family may be having a hard time, because on our end, we were trying to do the best we can. As I always trying to, to tell everybody, the community-based organization are a volunteer job. So what we do, it's free. The only time we survive is when we receive a few grants, for example, because let's say myself, I have a full-time job. I work from Monday to Friday, nonstop. So sometimes I have to sacrifice my own hours. I have to leave work because we receive a call or we have an emergency. Now, the only time we can like breathe is when we receive a little fund, and this is giving us the, a little window to like a little way to hire 2 or 3 people like we do for now. And we're trying the best, because I remember in the past we were receiving a lot of volunteers, but this thing, you cannot have somebody coming every single day and not paying them, because they end up disappearing. That's what I was trying to explain. I think we had a conversation with Chelsea and also in the America, like, well, we may have people, because this is becoming, this asylum seeker a problem. We were just thinking like, 2 years ago, well, it's done. We're not going to receive anymore. But when you look at year after year, since 2021, I think 2020, so you see that this is never going to stop. That means we need more. We really need support for, other cities, which is not happening now. I only see Portland struggling. So I'm asking myself, if, this is going to be like that, because we kind of stuck ourselves, because the number are growing and we don't know what to do. Sometimes if you look at the news, you see that, we all overwhelmed. It's not only City of Portland, even the community-based organization are really struggling, because with a limited end, because we put 5 people, just imagine, you can have 2 or 3 or 5 people. How can they help over 400, people? So like 50, 60 families, just making this job very hard and extremely hard. And what we do, the best we can do, is, once the family arrives, they reach out, because maybe they'll go straight because, they had friends who show them, how to get to the general assistance or to reach out the city. Sometimes we receive phone call like, there's 1 or 2 family who just arrived. And what we do, we'll call for one community member to do a pickup from the bus station or wherever they get here. And we'll take them to the GA, where they can get a space. Well, now, as I mentioned, sending them to the hotel, the other big problem was the cooking. As our hotel, we don't have, we don't have a stove. As they were getting the voucher, and the family had a hard time to cook, and that's even this is even the reason that Maine Immigration Right Coalition and community-based organization came together to see how can we do to support, because asylum seeker was crying for food. Like family, they may have voucher, but where they're gonna cook, because the hotel were not allowing them to actually, cook there, because anyway, where you gonna cook, because there was no stove. So this is pretty much where what we have been struggling for the past, I would say, almost a year. It's a back and forth thing, because we keep receiving new family, and the same issue still going on and on and on. That's why this is a good occasion, a good opportunity for all of us to think about it and to see how we can, talk about it, how we can get more people involved, because what's happening there is gonna become, it's getting worse and worse and worse. So we don't want to end up like, saying like, oh, why did we didn't help? Why this and that? Why this person didn't do that? So the other big issue, I think, is the affordable housing option. Finding a house in Portland, it is hard, extremely hard. This has been going on for a long time, I know, but now with asylum seeker, if you look around, as Chelsea mentioned, yes, people can go anywhere, because they've been living to that hotel for almost 9 months or over a year, because where are we gonna put them? And I remember a conversation I was just mentioning to, I think I talked our first meeting. I was just talking to Chelsea. Just to see, like, is there any way the city of Portland can seek help from other cities? I know housing, between Portland, Westbrook, may be hard. Is there any way we can reach out to, because I know Maine have a lot of city, that may be a solution. This is me, I don't know. I'm not saying it's it may happen that way, but I'm just thinking, well, we cannot house, over 100 people we have here. How about the more that are coming? It's just like, wow, you look at it, you look at the life there. When you drive around, if you take your time and drive outside the Howard Johnson Hotel, going around those hotels, it really looks like a refugee camp, believe me. Now it's a winter, kids wants to play, for example, they cannot go outside, it's cold, so they are playing in the lobby. So every time the little kids are playing in the lobby, the manager or the owner is getting very angry. See, so it's like, well, we need to do the best to get these folks out here, because it's an ongoing issue, and we really need to do something, because it's today, it's tomorrow, and I don't want to feel. I mean, one day you're gonna wake up like, okay, you know what? The hotel is like no more. So where are we gonna put them? So I don't know if we're gonna have another expo experience, which I don't believe the city is gonna do this again. But I'm assuming that, well, helping, it's good. So I really appreciate what you did tonight, because it's not a lot of cities that have been doing this. I've been to Maine, so except the city of Portland that does a lot. I remember Brunswick did the best 2 years ago. This is actually the first time, I saw you stand up. I saw, like, Camden City interested on doing something, which to not to repeat, what Chelsea and Fatima just mentioned earlier. And yeah, those are the major challenges. So if we all can work together and see how we can help those families, as they mentioned here, they are not here just to seek, help or money, because most of them are here they are family members. They have family members that they're supporting here, and they also have family members that need to be supported back home, because people come run for Africa or for any country for a reason. So I believe that, I am gonna be short and probably receive, question, when you're ready. That's what I wanted to share tonight. I really appreciate what you did tonight. Very touchy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and we appreciate you being here to answer our questions and to tell us about your experiences. Just listening to all of you, thank you so much for the important work you do. And clearly you have helped us understand that coordinating all of these supports to say it's a daunting task, it does not even, I think, do it any justice. And the system is clearly not working. And, what can be done to reform it? I think it starts with programs like this tonight. And what all of you are doing is educating us. It's educating the public. So thank you for that. I want to start with some questions that came in already. And I invite folks in the audience, if you have any additional questions you'd like to ask, you can type them into the Q&A box or into the chat box. The first question that came in was from Eric. He says that we are helping a young Afghan family with 6 children under age 10. They moved from a hotel to a large apartment last month. 3 of the children recently enrolled in school. How can the mother and father obtain assistance with English language instruction, which is a major barrier to their ability to function in the Portland community? Eric and Holly.
I can answer that question. So I just applied for a grant a couple months ago with We Are America. They are actually giving money to start a program for Afghans, because we never really had, because their native language is Dari or Pashto, and they have very hard time. The system that is created already, like Portland Adults, and I know, Chelsea, you might know about other programs, they don't cater directly to the Afghan community. So we are creating a program that is just for the Afghan community. And this person, I will write you my email address. Please reach out to me so I can just enroll them to the program so they can start learning English. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me go ahead and change this to gallery view. There we go. And so we had another question that came in. This one is from Stu, and it's a question for each of the panelists. What single piece of advice would you give someone thinking about coming to the US as an asylum seeker? So anyone who wants to go first with that one.
All right, let me try. Okay, people come for asylum, because they are running from, a danger. We all know. My advice would be to, some of those things like America is a paradise where, like if I cross the border, everything is gonna be, falling from the sky. It's not telling them the truth, because, life is hard here. The only good thing is like, you protection is fine, you can actually, when you cross the border here, from what you were running from, let's say for atrocity or other thing, which is good. But life is not so easy, life is not so easy. And I believe that, you must have a vision, must have a vision when you come to the United States. Otherwise, you're gonna go in the circle. So coming here is good if you're running from any danger. But once you're here, you really need to have a good vision, because as you start, embracing American life, you're really gonna see it's not easy. It's very hard to live in America. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would say that, to, expand a little bit upon what Pappy just said, that you'll have to really have, unfortunately, a lot of patience and realize or recognize that your first situation isn't going to be your forever situation. So we'll have families that travel here and they've heard misinformation potentially. They'll show up and believe they may have an apartment ready for them, in a very short period of time, or their situation of what it's going to look like right now in a hotel is very different from what they expected to have. Certainly someone may be waiting in a hotel for a long period of time. Their first apartment may not be an ideal apartment because, again, they don't have those eligibility requirements that get them into maybe a higher end apartment, for example. And that can be really disheartening. You're expecting to move into an apartment like that's really well managed, really well maintained, and that's not always the case. And so the situation, I would say, is just really doing the additional really hard work, which is just getting as much information as possible and, reaching out to every connection you possibly can, being a very good advocate for yourself. There are families, unfortunately, as mentioned before, they're spread all over. We don't have enough agencies to provide like one-on-one support for each family, which would be ideal to walk them through every step of the process. So it's really going to be advocating as strongly and hardly as you can, reaching out and connecting with as many people as possible so that you can get your English language skills, really well so that when it is time for you to get your work permit, you can really hit the ground running and be able to maintain a job for your family and have a successful, good paying position for your family to become independent. But I would say like being patient, doing the research, like Poppy said, what you may think you're walking into and expecting here may not be the exact reality initially.
Thank you, Chelsea. Fatima, did you have any advice that you would give?
I do. I actually have a lot of families now because when Afghanistan falls, so my families are spread around the world, and some of them in the army bases that are trying to come to America. So they keep asking me this question, and what it's, I think there is what Americans don't realize. There's, of course, there's this almost myth and a propaganda in America that, like, some Americans think that America is the greatest country in the world, but that propaganda is more life around the world than it is in America. Most countries, most people, I growing up really with that idea because you see that in movies and everything. But the reality of America is very different, you know. And I, beside talking to them about what Poppy and Chelsea was talking, I really want them to be prepared emotionally because this country, if you're running away, if you're from Afghanistan, there were bullets hitting your body. Here, bullets are hitting your soul. So here, you have to be emotionally ready to live in this country. There is a lot of microaggression, and some of the time people don't even realize. Like, it's very common nowadays for Americans to just walk to me and say, "Oh, how are you? You're from Afghanistan," or this. All of these are microaggression. And as a foreigner, when you come to this country and you look different, Maine is a very white state. So if you're a person of color, you are miles. You people can see that you're not white or you're not Mainers. They even call us, new Mainers. So that's a racial term in a way too. So racializing us, even though while they are accepting us and indirectly not accepting us. So it's like, it's a very confusing place to be if you're coming to Maine. But again, it has beautiful, you can breathe. That's what I love about Maine. It's trees, it's beautiful. And also sometimes it's good to be away from your aunties who are trying to force you to do things like eating a lot of food and things. So it's nice. It's nice.
Thank you for that perspective to look on the bright side. I do want to give an opportunity for Catherine Lyon to come back on. She is a representative here tonight from the Connecting Across Cultures organization, which is our local Mid-Coast Immigrant Support Network. Catherine, if you'd like to unmute yourself, I will do my screen share and we can put up those resources that we were discussing a little bit earlier. So
Okay.
Welcome back in one moment, please, while I share my screen. Oops. I'll just quickly get through to them. There we go. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Julia. So just to reiterate, the Connecting Across Cultures group, our three goals: educating ourselves and others about immigration through partnering with the library for programs such as these, working on creating an infrastructure to welcome asylum seekers who move to the Mid-Coast, and finally to help immigrant support organizations in other parts of the state. I'd like to emphasize we don't require any special skills, just a desire and a commitment to help identify resources that we can marshal to help support new neighbors. The greatest resource in our communities is our people. And one of the marvelous things, the people who come here have enormous courage and tremendous creativity. And they're met with a lot of people with energy and hope and good hearts. And please join us at CAC and find a place for yourself with our work. We'd be delighted to have any and all comers. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. And I'd like to thank each of the panelists who took time tonight to speak with all of us. And to those of you who took the time out tonight to attend and listen. And we hope that you will share this program with other people you know. You'll be able to find the recording on the Camden Public Library Program's YouTube channel. And as we said, change cannot happen unless people are educated and they know what to fight for. And tonight, I think we all got a good look at the situation that we have here in Maine and some of the changes that desperately need to be made. So thank you again, Chelsea, Fatima, Pappy, and Catherine for coming tonight. And I wish you all well and hope to see you again at future talks. Good night.
Thank you so much.